I am Willie Winkler, and we are going to build an exit seat. So now, we're going to assemble the headrest. We're going to start with this piece, which is the top of the spine. We're going to put the two vertical sides on. These rebates go on the inside, left and right. And then this piece, with the rebates on the bottom side, now that will hold itself together, but I like to put a few screws into the bottom face as well. Make sure you're drilling down into the second piece of wood. You're not missing it, because there's a few positions here where you can drill down and you're actually just screwing straight into the vertical piece. So you need to come through the vertical piece into the horizontal piece. Make sure you're holding all of these joints in tight when you're piloting them, so that the screws pull them tight together. You don't want your torque setting all the way up for this. You want it about a third of the way up, and that way it's not going to pull the screw right down into the face of the wood. Solid. Let's lace it up. So I've got 6 meters of bungee here with the frayed end. So the first thing I'm going to do is trim that off and use a lighter to burn the plasticky material on the outside, and that'll be much neater, easier to thread. You could also use a little bit of masking tape and sort of wrap it around into a needle. Put a knot in the end of your 6 meter bungee. We start here on the bottom left, and it goes from the inside. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come across the front and go on the outside of number 1. And you can see there's a rebate, and it's going to come up that rebate and poke back out again. And we're going to continue in that manner all the way up to the top. And then you can pull it all the way through to that knot. So now we've reached the top. We've done all of the horizontal bungees up the face, and we're coming across, same as usual, in the outside, tuck down on the inside there, and come up through that hole. And then we've switched to doing the vertical bungees. So now we're going to do the same thing. So now we're running out of material. No problem, we'll just drag some more of that 6 meters through. We don't want any of it pulled to its maximum tightness, we want it tight. So pull it across, trap it with your finger, and get the next one, feed it through, put it across, trap it with your finger, and that'll give us that extra bit of bungee to get to the end. That finishes at the top left by going down through that hole, pulling tight. We're going to just tie that in a knot. I'm just going to leave that like that for the moment, and then when we tension it, we can get it absolutely right and work out what we want. Here's the headrest. We started down here on the inside. We came across the front, and we went in the outside, up the rebate, and back out again. And it comes across in these little divots. So it comes across, up, and we wove all the way to the top until we got to this side, where we came in normally, and then we just ducked down and up through that hole. And then we went down and across and up, and went all across the front face on the outside of these back ones. So these back ones are pulling these ones forwards. Tensioning as we go, and until we end up with something which is going to hold your head when you bounce back. I'm going to put vertebrae onto the bottom of the headrest, and we're going to use these two, which have got no hook on the back of them. They fit into these rebates nice and snugly in here, with their threaded insert on the outside, leather on the bottom. Okay, headrest done. Now let's talk about the different vertebrae. These vertebrae have got an angle that slopes downwards like that towards the back edge. These are the bottom 4 vertebrae, whereas the top vertebrae have an angle that slopes upwards. So these actually form a curve which is the top of the spine. That is the big curve at the back and the lumbar support at the bottom. All of these are going together with 30mm screws. We're pushing them in first, and then we'll just come through and zip them all up. Great. A subtle curve that way, a curve that way, topped off with a headrest. Onto the pelvis. We're going to start with these two pieces, the 45s. They slot into each other with those rebates on the inside face, and they grip this piece with its rebates facing backwards. That should all slot together nice and tight with these right up to the top of those shoulders, and then we can screw that together from the outside here. Pilot first. That's the start of the pelvis. Pushes down into the W. You're going to come down here and just clicks into place like that. We can flip that over, pilot and screw. It's strong when they're in the rebates and everything's pulled tight together. Next, the two back pieces, left and right. You want these rebates on the outside. They slot down there and they run down that back groove. You want that pushed all the way on. That is flush with the top here, both sides. Then we can screw that from the inside after we put in a pilot. 30 mils, again, 6 of those, 3 down each side. Flush with that top edge and held down nice and tight. And there you can see where those 45s help that wood sit on that face. The cable management, the bungee cord, that just slips down into both of those pieces, drives all the way firm till it's flush on that face, fits into its own little rebate, screw with a 30 mil from the front face. And the last piece of the pelvis is the top. So what we're going to do is actually lay that one down flat, push it all in. There we go. I'm going to pilot it first. Where you can, and you've got enough plywood that you're going into sideways, to bury a deeper screw, go up to the 50 mil and you can put those into these positions. You can really push that down, and it's got to be flush. So there's 7 screws across the back. Now I'm clamping everything together and I'm putting quite a lot of force into this to bury these deep screws. And in the front two, we put a 30 mil. Pelvis. Got to lace it up. So we've got 2 lengths of 4 millimeters. We're going to tie a knot in one end and we're going to work from the inside of the tip here. We're going to go then behind the first, behind the face, across the middle. And then we're going to go to the back, and that is number 1. It then comes up a little rebate into number 2. And we reverse that. So it goes in there from the front, underneath everything, and across there into number 2, and out of number 3, under everything, number 3, and number 3. So now we're out of number 4, into number 4, underneath everything, and across. Underneath everything. And
go on.
And underneath everything, back up through there. That's number 5. Into the back, number 5. Across to 6. This isn't through tight yet, so there's loads more material here. We'll catch up. That one goes in there. Underneath everything. Number 7. That's up to 8, underneath everything, up to number 8, back of number 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, across to 8. Okay, so that must have all been 7s. 6, 7, yeah, 8. Underneath everything. And you're on the last one. In there. And it jumps to there. So that just does a neat little jump over that front piece, and then comes back under everything, back down through there, under everything, and now again to the outside. a bit like you were on the front, but it's a trickier thread in there. So now we're running out of material and I'm going to have to pull things tight from the start. We've caught up with our little spare and we just carry on now using these holes at the top. So we're going to go in underneath everything and we're going to go in through the face, and that comes across. There's no rebate on these, and you carry on underneath everything. Last time. Finishing up here on the top one, pulling it tight, tying it up. So that is one half complete. Got another 4 metre length, 4 metre-ish length here, and we're going to do the other side in through the face. We put it all the way through. And then I'm going to come across, but I'm going to go under the first one and up through there. And the deal is that every time we bring one back, we'll go under the next one. And that way we'll weave a little pattern down the front there. And it comes forwards, number one. And we're repeating exactly what we did on the other side. Pull that through, finishing there, next to the emergency stop. Tightening up. So here's a quick recap on lacing up the pelvis. It starts on the inside of this number one and goes across the opposite side, up this one to two, to two, to two, out three, and it carries on like that all the way to 8. When it comes back to the centre, it jumps over the W, has 2 more to do in the front, back to the centre, and finishes with this line of holes on the diagonal at the top. There's 5 of them finishing there. That's the last one. That's one side done. Then you go across the other side, again, back on the inside, but each one has to interlace with the opposite side now. So they're laced at the front, and they're interlaced at the back, and it finishes up here at the top left. And that is a pelvis. Seat belt. Starting at the headrest. I've got the little sewn end on the end of the seat belt. I'm going to hold it against this metal plate like that, push that up against it, and then I can go in with these M5 countersunk. Just going to put them up, tighten them up completely. Go in the side ones. So I'm going to tighten up these 2 top ones, but I'm going to pull these 2 side bungees out so they don't get trapped. Firmly fixing the seat belt. You just work down the spine, starting with rib number 1, pull it up tight, metal work, not tight, that's tightened. Now we're going to pull it as tight as we can and clamp that down. Rib number 2, which is the widest rib. Pull it up tight. Next one, next biggest down. And the next, these 2 bottom ones are the lumbar supports, so they've got the angle facing backwards. Put it up tight and clamp it down. Last one. Okay, so now we're going to put the buckle on the bottom of the seat belt. So we take the whole thing up through the first slot, down through the second, and we pull it up tight until we work out where it sits. And that is about right there. So then we flip that and we put this tail back up through there. These are M6s, So we need to go in with the bigger furniture fixings, with the bigger flanges on them. And that is going to trap that seat belt to the board. So you want to make sure they're done up nice and tight and that it's really pulled down on that seat belt. And you can chop that tail off. Great. And that can actually do a really lovely little armadillo. Like that. How cute. And now we're going to build the base box. We're going to do that upside down. So to begin with, we're going to put the floorboard face straight down like that. Here's our bearing. And the first job is to put that into that hole. It now gets sandwiched with that board. It's actually best just to use your own body weight to press that down finally. It should seat all the way down. Next, we're going to assemble the walls in this same upside down position. But before we do that, we need to pilot each of these. And when you've done one, you can work through all of them, slotting into the same board and using one to drill them all. And that's double useful when you're putting the whole thing together. And when you've pre-pilot drilled all of the brackets, it's time to assemble the walls. So we're going to put them in here. They'll slot down into the rebate. This is upside down, so this is the way up it needs to be. These are the brackets, they need to be pointing with the threaded insert closest to the bottom. Those rebates are on the inside, like that. And again, that really needs to sit into that rebate. It not being in will really cause a problem. So all of them need to be absolutely there. It's the belt that ties the whole top of that ring rigid before the board goes, the top board comes on and makes it a totally sealed drum. And the most important thing is to get that in the rebate first. This will fit itself together, so that needs to be tight in there. It's actually easier to screw the brackets in as individual units and then offer them up to the rest of the ring. You can feel the whole thing become solid as you finally tighten that screw. Put that one on and then you can offer it up to this one. That's it, it's just snuck in there, so now I can put another couple of 30 mils in. That's it. So that all slotted down into the rebate. You felt it just kind of chug in there. So now we're going to put the baseboard on. We're going to lift it on and move it across. Don't be afraid to use your body weight. Just to make sure the thing's gone down alright. We're going to make sure the bottom board has been countersunk and pilot drilled. I've missed every third one with the countersink. I've been through and put everything in with the pilot drill. The feet go where the countersink isn't, and everything gets a screw. The screws above the doorway, where there's a doorway, need to be shorter screws so they don't poke all the way through. And then we can put everything in. First of all, get the screw through the foot so you can see the tip of it. Find the hole, back the screw back out again. So it sits flat on the board, and then screw it in. And now it is time to put in the bottom bearing. We're going to lift that up first. We're using 60mm M10 countersunk bolts. I'm using again an Allen key drive. You put them through there, you can thread them in the bottom. If you're using your electrics, if you're feeding them through, this is the point where you take them from the side, through this cavity and up through the centre, but we're not, we're just doing a basic build. So we take our bearing And we can slide it straight onto those bolts. We're going to take an Allen key on the back and a socket set on the front. Tighten it up. I tightened them up one by one so it went down evenly, but it's really on there nice and tight. That's the base of your support. You want that to be rock solid. All of your weight going into the floor through that bottom pad. And now we're putting the nylon spigot into the base bearing. It's just slot straight down here into that 45mm hole. It's got two little grub screws on either side, and you tighten them up with an Allen key. So now that's fixed into the base bearing, we can flip on the lid. You twist it round till you line these up and it slots straight down. The spigot's in the right place, but it needs a little bit of wiggling over with a London pattern screwdriver. It's just to one side, it just needs to be wiggled by holding onto the side of the bearing, not the plywood, and budging it over slightly. This is the Kingpin. This is the adjustable version, and it's got two holes in the bottom, M10, that have both been tapped. They take a bolt that tightens up onto the spigot inside. So we're going to push that over the nylon and rock it down through that first top bearing. And there it is. That was really smart. Little M10, I've got a dome top Allen key drive again. So now we're going to put the door on. You've got to put the latch plate onto the door, back of the door. It sits on there, and the important dimension is that those two surfaces are even on the inside there. Put them together with 30mm screws. And then we put on a little cam lock. So first of all, you need to take off the locking plate. You don't take off this plate, which is actually limits how much it can turn, and we only want it to turn through a quarter of the angle. Bolt comes off the back. That fits through the lock hole. Locking plate goes on, but we should really check what the key's doing. So let's just put it in. Yeah, that's open and out, so it's in a good position. Check it out. Oh yeah, open, lock. And then you just put the door in. Latch in first. Make sure your lock's open. Close it up. There you go, and the key will come out. That's not going anywhere. Next is putting on the swing arms. Because my material was 17mm and not 18mm, put together it's come out at 34, and this is a critical measurement for the exit seat, 36mm through there. I'm using a 1mm PTFE packer. It's a really low friction plastic. Now I'm going to hold that into place. This down, and you can see it just slides into position like that. It's a 55mm coach bolt. I'm going to give it a little tap, but I'm going to give it a little tap when the square of the coach bolt is lined up with the square of the hole. And look, just sits down like that. And then do the same on this side. So we're not going to do them up too tight yet. And now you can see the full range of movement for the swing arms into that position and into that position. Now these can be more extreme shapes and get more extreme positions. Further forward, further back. But at the moment these are a safe sitting position, recline slightly, and as far forward as is possible, comfortably fly. So now it's time to add the exit seat. We're going to use the same packers to make up for the 17mm material, and we're going to be careful to add the front one at the front and the back one at the back. More extreme curve in the back one. So these need to be fitted into position first, and then the whole suit slid down. When you're on your own, it's a lot easier doing it laying down rather than standing up. The first time you put the coach bolts into the plywood, you just hammer them home and it crushes a bit of wood into a square on that side. Slam it in. So now I'll put some nuts on the back of there. So now we're remembering to put washers and an N10 nut. And the same on the back. So now we've got a body support with the back, and it's got the motion in it. And now we're going to fit our customised harness. First of all, putting in the belt and then putting in the leg straps. And hook those just up and out of the way around the ribs. I'm using M6 furniture bolts, and they fit here through the holes on the side, 3 of them on each side. They've been punched or they've been drilled, and they've been finished off with a little flame. So you get the bolts through first, into the belt and into the threaded inserts in the top of the pelvis. And now we've got 4 more of the same furniture bolt coming here into the front of the pelvis. So they go in there. Don't do them all the way up yet because you've got to get them to fit on this side too. So now we've got to fit the back of the harness into the ribs here. So you come up to rib number 3 and you go behind. You cross over at the front and you go behind rib number 1. And you've got to make sure that these bits lay flat across the chest. So make sure they're all smoothed in and everything's not twisted up. It's just going behind 2 ribs and crossing over at the front. And now it's time to lace up the bungee in the back. So the first step is to go through the back swing arm closest to the outside. And really we're going up symmetrically from there, but we're starting on this side, up through there. So we're going in there, and we're going in the first hole, all the way up to the top, straight out the top and back down again. At the top, the harness is still on the outside of the bungee, but here the bungee has gone around the harness and tied it in. And then we're mirroring the same thing on the other side, up the outside. So I'm making sure the bungee is even on both sides. So mirror it again on this side. You don't go behind the harness on the top pass, but you do go behind the harness on the bottom pass. So now that's sewn in on both sides. Pass through, doesn't matter which hole, and back up the other side. Trapping the harness in between the bungee cord as you come up on the bottom one, and then passing up to the top, you go into the 3rd hole, through the harness, over the top, around the harness, and trap the harness in that top loop. And ties off by coming through there and tying in a knot. So this side we're mirroring, going back up here. I've now threaded it through in the same way on both sides. So this just needs to pass through there and tie off. I'm not going to tie it off in a tight knot because I want to work out how tight I want that bounce to be. So now it is time to get into the exit suit. But first, we must check everything. We must make sure nothing's moving, it is absolutely solid, and that everything is tensioned to how we want it. Whether our bum fits in comfortably. We've got to make sure that all of the clamps of the plates at the front are tight and the seat belt is held in place and nothing's going to move there. That all of these bolts are tight enough as we want them, because you can change the tension of the seat movement. We're going to check that the harness is held securely into the pelvis. We're going to make sure the floor is flat and level, on level ground. We're going to make sure that everything is rock solid into the bearings. Nobody said it was safe. Nobody said you should get in one. But in one you will get. So you tighten up the suit from these two. Pull them out. So it's important at this point for the gentleman to gather your junk at the front. And we can do this one up. And tighten up here. So I think now I'm in. Yeah, so now I'm in. And I can go into both positions and move between them. So get on and build on. And jump in. If you've got questions about the project, get on the Discord. If you want to support the project, get on the Patreon. And if you want to download the plans, get on the GitHub. Like and subscribe!